husband Tim, our daughters Alex, Gloria, and our son Levi. And these are our best friends and neighbors, our kids' godparents, Aaron and Katie. For a long time, we'd been thinking about going to Peru as a family vacation together. We wanted to go in the winter because it's actually summer there on the other side of the equator. So in 2018, we decided it was the time. We packed up all of the essentials. We piled into the family minivan, and we drove to the Pittsburgh airport, where we said goodbye to what was probably the first white Christmas in about 7 years in Pittsburgh. Peru is located in the southern hemisphere, almost directly south of where we live in Pittsburgh. So we flew straight down to Fort Lauderdale and then down to Lima, Peru. Because it's on the other side of the equator, we got there while it was rainy season, but it was warm out.
The weather was gorgeous the whole time. I loved it.
The Andes Mountains lie in Peru and much of South America. This is a young mountain range, especially compared to the Appalachians where we live, because it's been formed by tectonic activity, that's the plates of the earth shifting around, rather than by water, the way that the Appalachians were formed. It's very craggy. The mountains are thin and poke up out of the ground, seemingly out of nowhere. It was the first international trip for our children, and they had a little bit of culture shock at first, but they adjusted relatively quickly and found their sense of adventure. We were there over the Christmas holiday. One of the first things we noticed was the abundance of annoying electronic Christmas music. All of those ornaments you get for your trees that play the music, they were everywhere, sometimes 2 or 3 of them playing at the same time. All of the towns, the plazas, and the center squares were decked out for the holidays, and there were many, many nativities. They were more central than Christmas trees, and certainly more central than Santa Claus or reindeer. Many of the nativities showed local features, like the bus line up to Machu Picchu. Many of the nativities had more than one baby Jesus in the manger. When we finally asked someone why this was, they talked about how the nativity is such a central piece of their Christmas decoration, and in a family it was a source of great pride to have the biggest and the best and the nicest baby Jesus in the manger. But each time you would buy a new baby to have a nicer, bigger one in the manger, you didn't want to get rid of the old one, so they just collected there.
So I missed New Year's Eve. I accidentally ate a hamburger that had peppers ground into it. And all I really remember about after lunch that day is you guys asking about if I wanted to go out to dinner with you, and I'm pretty sure I said, no, just leave me here in the hotel room to die. So tell me what happened after you left me in the hotel room to die.
We did walk around briefly after we got to Cusco. I think we went out to dinner. Then we said, we'll come back out later. So we went back, and we weren't sure we were going to get back out, but the kids still had some steam in them, and Katie and Aaron still had some steam, and so had I. So we said, okay, we'll go back out. And so we, Gloria and Levi and I, along with Katie and Aaron, went out, and at about 11:30, and it was packed. So the main square in Cusco is kind of like Times Square, only a bit bigger, and it was probably about as crowded, only nobody walked on the grass. I thought that was interesting. Like, it was completely packed. I mean, just shoulder to shoulder, you couldn't move, but still nobody walked on the grass. So imagine Times Square, only in an old colonial square, only they sell industrial grade fireworks on the street to anybody who asks for them. Gloria bought a couple of bags of confetti, and they spent the better part of a couple of minutes just throwing handfuls of confetti into each other's faces and laughing the entire time. It was quite wonderful. It was by far the best New Year's ever. Really enjoyed that.
That was a good one. One of the things that many people who've been to Peru will talk about is the food there, the Peruvian cuisine. They talk about how it's some of the best in the world. And you know what? They're right. We tried things like alpaca. Whatever this is, it's pretty, and it was tasty. The trout, while an invasive species that was introduced from other countries, is quite good there. And then there was this thing. Tim and Aaron ate it. The rest of us took a pass on that. But then again, Tim and Aaron will eat just about anything, much to Levi's disgust. That's a guinea pig, known locally as cuy. I will admit that I did try the cuy. And believe it or not, it tastes like chicken. And of course, there was the Gloria brand of food. And there was much great companionship. Our home base for most of our trip to Peru was the small mountain town of Cuzco. It's roughly the size of Pittsburgh, although the historic city center is much smaller. Many of the cathedrals and other colonial buildings in Cuzco and other parts of Peru were actually built on Inca structures by the colonial Spanish, who arrived in the 14 to 1600s. The Inca civilization, as we often talk about it, is relatively recent. Many of the Inca buildings were all but razed to the ground and replaced with colonial Spanish architecture.
Learned a little about the Peruvian culture just between New Year's and walking around during the day.
The hardest thing for me was not responding in German to anyone who spoke to me in Spanish.
We use this instrument we call pushka. We can speak dancing.
I learned about Inca.
Often the Peruvian native people are referred to as Incas, but that's a bit of a misnomer. The Quechua word, Inca, really means king. And so it would be a bit like calling all British people the kings or all American people the presidents. Inca referred to the ruler in charge of the empire.
How little we know about the Inca civilization. A lot of the sites, for example, that we do know about, we don't even know when they were built, what a lot of the things were used for. There's still debate about what a lot of the different ceremonial places were used for, or how many people lived there, with estimates ranging, orders of magnitude difference. The lack of knowledge I found fascinating.
I learned a lot about Incan and pre-Incan culture and history and architecture and religion.
Sacsayhuaman, which is an Inca site near Cuzco, is known for having huge stones built into the structure. There are many theories about how the people got these giant stones to the location they're at because they were not quarried on site. The Peruvian government is very passionate these days about preserving and restoring these archaeological sites that are both important to history and have brought a lot of tourism. Another fascinating site near Cuzco is the Maras salt mines. These are pre-Incan. Nobody's quite sure exactly how old they are, and they definitely gave geologist Katie a great day. We have quite a few pictures of rocks from our trip.
I think seeing the Maras salt mines was the best part of the trip.
An interesting thing that we learned while we were in Peru is that selfie sticks are all the rage. But please, kids, do everyone around you a favor and put the selfie stick away. Nearby Maras is Moray, which is believed to have been an agricultural testing ground. It is believed that these bowl-shaped terraces were put together to help trap heat and moisture so that the growing season could be extended.
The hike was very difficult.
The hardest was probably the hike.
Physically hardest was obviously the hike.
The 8-mile hike to Machu Picchu was physically, exhausting.
We opted to do the 2-day, 1-night section of the Inca Trail. We started at kilometer 104 of the most common Inca Trail. Hikers can travel for several days on the trail before reaching the final destination. But we wanted to see as much as possible while we were in Peru, so we decided to spend 1 day on the trail itself. The views of the mountains in the Urubamba were absolutely breathtaking. The kids were rock stars on the hike, and even our grumpy 17-year-old had to admit partway through that she was having fun. I think she even smiled a few times.
That we had like a thin path. We were carrying stuff, and it was very high up, the altitude and stuff.
In Cuzco and the hike to Machu Picchu, I learned that Tai Chi breathing helps set altitude.
Every time we turned a corner, we were slapped with another breathtaking view. One of my favorite moments was when we turned a corner and we looked out, and little Levi just stopped, and he sighed and he said, "Wow, I am so glad that God made all of this for us to enjoy." The trail was full of steps every turn, including the last set of stairs, which the locals refer to as the Gringo Killer. And finally, after the Gringo Killer, we came through the Sun Gate, and there it was, Machu Picchu.
I have been multiple places around the world now that people regard as being wonders of the world or extremely beautiful places, and it is far and away the most beautiful place I have ever been in my life.
Best part for me was doing the hike into Machu Picchu through the Sun Gate.
But it was very beautiful. It was very surprising to see afterwards. The buildings and just exactly where they hid it so far up into the mountains.
Yeah.
Walking around Machu Picchu with my dad. Because I got to hang out with my dad, and it was an ancient city that was built thousands of years before I was there, and it never got destroyed by the Spaniards. They never found it, but they still fled from the place. And I just thought it was cool because it's a part of history. I had no idea that Machu Picchu was one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Our last big stop was to a city called Puno on the edge of Lake Titicaca. This is the lake that splits Peru and Bolivia. The transportation we took to the lake was a bit unnerving, but the kids did enjoy it an awful lot. The lake was beautiful and calm the day we were on it, especially considering that it was the rainy season just then. Lake Titicaca is best known for something called the Floating Islands or the Reed Islands. As you can see in the lake, there are many, many reeds that grow up out of the bed of the lake. And out of these reeds, the local people, who are thought to have come over from Bolivia, began to build their own islands to protect them from others who would do them harm. We were greeted warmly and with great enthusiasm. We only met the women and the young children on the island. The men were out fishing for the day, and the older children had gone off to the island that had the school on it.
serás. Dame la mano, querido amigo. Dame la mano, mi amigo serás. No me importa de dónde tú vengas. No me importa el color de tu piel. Si tu corazón es como el mío, dame la mano, mi amigo serás.
If you look closely, you will see solar panels in the background. Recently, the Peruvian president made a drive to provide electricity to the islands to improve their way of life. Perhaps the crowning moment of the floating islands was our chance to take a ride on the local form of transportation. Our final destination in Lake Titicaca was a place called Tequila Island. The Isle of Tequila is known for its textiles, beautiful weavings made out of wool and even human hair as a gift from a wife to her husband. And it used to be, once upon a time, that men were assessed romantically by how good their knitting was. But all good things must come to an end. And so we packed up from Puno and headed back to Lima. We were able to spend one last day exploring in Lima. We spent it on the local beach.
Most surprising was how rough the sand/gravel was on the beach in Lima.
I don't know, it was just really cool in Peru. It's boring home.
Our flight out of Lima back into the United States was delayed, and so we had to make do with what we had to keep ourselves entertained in the airport as we waited for our plane. Unfortunately, that plane didn't make it to Fort Lauderdale in time, which meant we didn't make it to our flight back to Pittsburgh in time, and wound up spending one more day on vacation.
I think the most surprising thing was our unexpected extra day in Florida.
As a result, we wound up visiting 2 beaches at 2 different oceans in 2 different hemispheres in 2 days. It was a beautiful way to close out one year and bring in another.
Glacier National Park in Montana.
Glacier National Park.
Maybe in a few years, we're thinking about possibly doing something really big like Kilimanjaro.
Hopefully somewhere warm.
Peru! You want to go back?
Yeah. Or maybe Lake Uganda.
As for me, I already know what my next adventure is going to be. It's been on the books for a while, and I can't wait to share that one with you too.
What was the hardest part of the trip?
Dealing with bickering children.
Fair enough.